Hey everybody, this is Dr. Wenzel, Brentwood MD. In this video, I'm going to be talking with you about how to manage what you can't control in your health. You know, in a successful relationship or a successful business, we tend to manage the things that we can't control much more effectively than we do in our health. You know, we identify whether it's critical or whether it's urgent, and based on those variables, we either use it to, okay, it's COVID, we have to innovate, it forces innovation, creativity, and we get massive breakthrough. In other words, we embrace it and we leverage it to our favor. If it's somewhere in between, we might outsource it. If it's neither critical nor urgent, we might just ignore it. And we go through that rhythm of life, navigating relatively effectively in our businesses and in our relationship. But for some reason, when it comes to our health, it's not quite that simple, even though the strategy is much the same. We tend to take a lot of ownership and of things that we can't control, and it ends up creating a lot of overwhelm. And when we are in a state of overwhelm, we can't access creativity and resourcefulness. And so I hope this video will be valuable. I think it's important to start with what I like to point out often in my practice is the difference between fault and responsibility. When we're talking about non-modifiable, uncontrollable health risk, like you have an unbelievable family history of breast cancer, you have a profound history of early cardiac disease in every generation of men in your family, you do everything right, still end up with some form of cancer. You do everything right and still end up with a heart blockage. Those types of things. Specifically, when we talk about non-modifiable risk factors, they're not your fault. But being at fault is different than still being responsible. If a child is dropped off at your doorstep in a basket as an infant, that is not your fault, but it is 100% your responsibility to do something with it. And we need to access this understanding and this clarity of fault and responsibility as we navigate our own health, specifically as it pertains to our non-modifiable risk factors. I think the first thing to realize is that there are diseases that are just part of being a human being long enough. Call it time in residence. Specifically, atherosclerosis, the root physiology behind the development of heart disease. Now, whether that develops into heart attack and stroke, or whether it's just benign, stable coronary plaques that every single 95-year-old on the planet has, it is vastly different. But understanding that you can't avoid heart disease. Being a human long enough will develop heart disease. Whether it's stable or unstable is a different situation. And secondarily, there's no cookbook solution to how do you manage the non-modifiable risk factors. But what we can do, and what I implore you to do, is to use all of your resources, all of your resourcefulness, and that is to manage aggressively all modifiable risk factors. So in other words, anything you can do to lower your risk and modify it, you should. If you're smoking, you should stop smoking. If you have 50 pounds of excess visceral fat, you should lose the visceral fat. If you have bad blood pressure, high blood pressure, we should get that controlled. If you have an imbalance in your stress life, where you're just disproportionately 10 out of 10 stressed, we've got to correct those things. If you've corrected all of those things and you still are left with things that you can't control, the number one most important thing you can do is align with the right provider to find the strategy. And look, this is not like you need to come see me. You need to find your person. Finding the right medical provider where your goals, your values are aligned, where you have an environment where you can communicate in a dialogue, where you can express your fears, your concerns, your ambitions, your goals, and together come up with a strategic plan with documentable, measurable criteria that you're going to follow over time is absolutely what you need to do. And so really this boils down to, how do you manage the things you can't control? It's not a what problem, it's a who problem. So much in our life we think that our problems are what we should be doing. Very often it is not a what problem, it's a who. Who can we put in our life that will give us what we need in order to gain clarity, insight, and certainty that we're taking the right actions to get the big result that we're looking for. And in the case of your health, if you've got a non-modifiable risk factor that is bearing down on you and putting you in harm's way, it is not a what do I need to do, it is a who do you need in your life. I hope this encourages you to go find your who, and until we meet again, guys, take care.